Welcome to Get Unstuck, Move Forward with Your Life. I am your host, Jason Hopcus. Thank you for joining us today. Today, I'm honored to have Kelly Ryan and Karen Burd joining us. Kelly and Karen co-authored a memoir, Warrior Sisters. One was a drunk and the other a junkie. To help each other, they had to save themselves first. Warrior Sisters is a compelling story that describes the insidiousness of addiction, the potential and promises fulfilled in recovery, and the power of love. Author Claudia Black called Warrior Sisters truly inspirational and went on to share how this family memoir captures readers by the candidness and vulnerability of the authors Kelly and Karen, sisters raised in an abusive alcoholic family. Their life stories reflect familial pain, consequences of different ways of coping, and the search for ways to emotionally and physically survive. Welcome, Kelly and Karen. I'm grateful to you both for being here today for another episode of Get Unstuck Radio.
Thank you so much for having us.
So I've read your incredible book, and I just want to say, for anybody that's listening, you should pick up a copy of Warrior Sisters. I'm going to say that throughout the course of this. I was so inspired by just the raw emotion of how you guys shared your stories, and knew I had to have you as a guest because, I mean, I think, you know, for most of us, whether it's a personal story or somebody that we know, a loved one, a coworker, we all likely know somebody that's facing something that may have a hold or a grip on them that they're not thriving through. Tell us a little more about your individual stories. Karen, I know you were wanting to share first here, so tell us a little bit more about you and your backstory.
Yes. My name's Karen, obviously, and I always want to follow that up with, and I'm a.
Okay.
You know, I am an alcoholic and a drug addict, and I've been in recovery for 9 years. And boy, it's hard to we were born in New Jersey, and grew up there, and I you know, as a little girl was very close to our family and everything like that, but due to whatever, but my father was alcoholic, and our home was abusive. And, you know, that's kind of like, for me, I relate it now to like maybe living around a terrorist. You just don't know when the eggs are going to break. You're walking on eggshells and you just don't know when they're going to break. So my path, you know, it's funny, there's 4 girls and we've all taken completely different paths in life. I was very rebellious and very angry when I was young. So I started drinking at a very young age, and I always drank alcoholically. You know, the very first time I drank, I was sick for 3 days afterward. I was 14 years old and sick for 3 days. And I thought, this is horrible. And then I did it again.
Right. You didn't learn from it, right?
No. I don't learn from. I have to be. It's a character defect of mine. I have to be beaten into the ground to give in, and that is absolutely what happened. You know, I'm going to stay. You know, there's so many things that went on. There's no way I could tell you guys all of them, but I can tell you that my alcoholism progressed, and it kept getting worse, and the consequences kept getting worse and worse and worse. The first consequence, I say, that really, really hurt me was a divorce. That broke my heart. I didn't want that, and still to this day regret my drinking and stuff from then. So anyway, till I was 29, I drank alcoholically, and then I actually went to a hypnotist because I could not stop. And I had been through some 12-step, it wasn't through some 12-step programs, I had been to some 12-step programs and poo-pooed it. Because
so you weren't really working the program.
No, I was like walking in there going, oh, this is cute. You know? Oh, I can go play softball with a bunch of sober people. Fun. Maybe that'll keep me sober, you know, but I wasn't serious at all. And I did not know that I wasn't serious. So finally I was serious, and I'm just going to, you know, a hypnotist did help me. I believe in all different ways of getting sober. Whatever works for you is awesome, just awesome. And try different things, try everything, try anything. I tried everything. Psychiatrists, psychologists, blah, 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 the whole checklist, none of it worked. After the hypnotist did help me. And after about 10 years of not drinking, when I walked into his office, his name was Mr. Wright. I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. This is too cool. So, yeah. After, so I actually didn't drink for about 10 years, which was awesome. But I had zero, what I call now, recovery. I changed nothing in my life other than not drinking. So I was still angry. And now I had a new outlet, though. I worked a lot, which thank God I did, because that's helping me to this day. I worked really hard for a long time. And, when I look back, I realized that my plan never worked, that my life would never have been my plan, but God did do for me what I couldn't do for myself. I got a great job for a long time and was able to manage.
But even so, you were kind of white knuckling things.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. When I was at work, though, I worked 10, 12 hours a day. So it kept my brain really engaged, not 12 hours a day, but there were 10-hour days, and it was in sales. So to be honest, that the type of work that I did, that was a high to me. It was a high to me. When you're in sales and you're on straight commission, you get the deal. It's like, whoo, so that really fulfilled a need that I had to have that. But yeah, I did white knuckle a lot of times when people went out after work, and the type of people that I worked with, we were, there's a lot of addicts in that business.
So bring me forward. I mean, you sober for 10 years, obviously something else happened. What came next?
What came next was my grandfather got sick. He got very, very sick, and he passed away. And I started to medicate myself, and then by taking his medicine. And I started taking opiates, and I loved them, and they fixed everything for me. I felt like Superwoman. Well, I went on to get hopelessly addicted to them for 10 years. I lost my job. I lost my home where I was living down in South Florida, moved up to DeLand, and I ended up a crackhead. That's what I ended up. So don't smoke crack to get off opiates.
Okay. For anybody listening, like that's words of wisdom right there.
That's right. Don't do that. That's how I ended up anyway. And in the 2 years that I did that, I literally lost my mind. I heard you say that you lost your mind, and I literally lost my mind. I had cut all the wires in my home because I was afraid things were watching me. I dug up dirt outside because I thought there was something in the air was making me sick. I was going to take these dirt samples in and have them tested, cut my hair off so I could have myself tested for what was wrong with me. Of course, it couldn't be the dope. That would be out of the question. So anyway, I had been getting
everything other than in the mirror.
Yeah, everything other than that, anything other than that, please God, let it be anything other than that. I couldn't give, that was seriously my relief. And when that word came out of my mouth one time when I was hitting the pipe, I realized that what I have been being told for 50 years at this point was true. I was just looking for relief. I was trying to kill everything else. And all the people say, oh, you're running away from your feelings. Oh, I poo-pooed everything.
Right.
I was wrong about everything.
Wow.
That's one thing I really want to get across.
I love that. And honestly, I want to save the next part of it for after the break. But Kelly, I'd love to hear from you. I know that you have your own journey here that looked very different than Karen's. Share more with us about, your story.
Jason, thanks so much for having us. And I love the idea and the name of your your radio show Unstuck, because we all have something or many things that we would like to be able to move forward in life. So thank you for having us.
It's a pleasure.
And, you know, I'm listening to Karen, and I think that's such the value of Warrior Sisters in the book is our stories are so different, and yet kind of where it took us in terms of recovery and being able to live life and enjoy life and do it without alcohol or drugs and the gifts that come from that. So kind of the results the same, the journey is very different, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And, you know, I was a high performer. I never drank in high school. I was not like Karen. I was able to learn from other people's experiences, and I would look at my father, who was a daily drinker and, you know, violent and, you know, created a chaotic environment. And then I would look at Karen, who anytime she drank, she would black out or get violently ill, and I would think, well, that does not look like a lot of fun, and I want nothing to do with it. And so I vividly remember telling myself as a teenager that I would never be an alcoholic and I would never have a problem with alcohol. And so for me, it was a progressive disease. I did not drink in high school. I started drinking in college, and I managed college well and got, you know, A's and did very well. And I definitely got drunk in college, but I just felt like it was part of the experience and really didn't think it was, you know, a problem. And actually, I don't think it was at that point. And then I moved to Southern California, and that was a wonderful place to be in my 20s and enjoy the outdoors and run and rollerblade and work out and enjoy drinking. And so that seemed fine. And somewhere along the way, it went from being fun to being bondage, and being fun and not being able to manage it. And so the issue of being a high performer, you know, I graduated high school a year early. I went to college and did very well. I started out as a special education teacher for behavioral disordered and learning disabilities. And then I went back and got my master's and got licensed as a licensed marriage family therapist, and graduated cum laude. So I was a high performer, and I looked good, and I worked hard, and I really believe that getting my master's degree and studying psychology really helped me create a framework for my childhood, because it was so chaotic. And Karen didn't mention, but she was in and out of psychiatric hospitals and did a lot of self-harm as an adolescent. And so I kind of moved into the parentified child role and took care of my mom and my sisters while she was away, and tried to make sense of things that seemed pretty crazy and uncontrollable. And so, again, I looked great on the outside. I was very successful. I had a national reputation for business development and marketing, and I also would drink with customers and referral sources, and kind of had a budget to wine and dine and those types of things. So, you know, our stories are very different because I was able to function. I didn't miss time from work. I traveled nationally, and again, was well respected in my field. And so for me, part of my denial was that I wasn't an alcoholic, because I was nothing like Karen and nothing like my father. And even I'd mention it to other family members, and they would say, well, you're nothing like Karen. You don't have a problem. And so, you know, I was able to fly under the radar. And of course, I loved hearing that. And so, you know, I went to my first 12-step meeting in 1996, and I didn't get sober until 2005. So for 9 years, I knew that I had a problem, but I would always, that denial would sneak back up, and I would, you know, have short times of abstinence and say that I didn't need to stop drinking completely. And so I'm a person that never had any external consequences for drinking. I didn't have, a DUI or a divorce or a loss of a job. It just kept taking away my joy and hurting myself. So anyway, that said, in terms of my background, I studied and understand family systems, and in terms of, generational patterns. So Karen and I are fourth generation alcoholic. We, had a family legacy of drinking. Our family drank every single day. And, celebrations, dinner, there was always a reason to drink. And so when you grow up like that, I just thought it was normal. And so I just want to mention kind of when I was studying, and Claudia Black's work really saved my life in terms of family roles of children. And so I knew Karen, like it finally made sense. Oh, Karen was the scapegoat of the family. She was the identified patient, and she was labeled crazy, and she was, taken to psych hospitals, but really the whole family was very sick. And I think that those experiences in adolescence shaped me to why I did what I did professionally, and probably did it, very successfully. So, I stopped drinking again for 9 years. I was kind of playing with the idea that I could have a problem. And I stopped drinking because I had been married for 15 years. And my husband and I had done a dance for many years and argued about alcohol, and I would play a lot of games to show him that I was able to manage it or control it, or that I was willing to quit for short periods of time. And he was really ready to leave me and had a plan. And so when I say I never got divorced, it could have happened. And I did not get sober for my husband, but it was a straw that broke the camel's back. And frankly, it was really one of the most loving things anyone's ever done for me.
Right.
Yeah.
I love that. And I love the counterbalance of your story and in the differentness. And Karen, it sounds like you kind of got labeled the bad girl, and Kelly, you were the counterbalance of the good girl. And in a family structure and how that plays out in the world, it sounds like you both beautifully navigated that role throughout the course of your life. So I want to thank you both for your courage and vulnerability to show up and share your stories with us in a way that I think most people are not inclined to do. I know that takes a real commitment to your own journeys of recovery, and having been in a similar spot myself from a different place, there is a lot of healing that comes from just being able to show up and be authentically who you are. So thank you both. I would love to talk about the tipping point from your perspectives about how did you move from those most painful parts of your life into, recovery and now sustained recovery. What was that like for you? Karen, you want to start?
Sure, I do. I actually, it took me a long time to move there because I believed that if I couldn't do something myself, I was basically worthless. So I just didn't believe that, outside help was going to help me. And some of that had to do with the hospital when I was younger, psychiatric hospitals. I was like, somebody said, oh, they want to help you. There was no trust factor at all for me, for anybody else besides myself. So I counted on myself. And the last 2 years, I was getting arrested all the time. I was arrested 12 times with felony charges of possession and just the crazy. What really happened for me, my tipping point was I lost my mind, the paranoia, and there was nobody left, nobody. Speak to my family anymore because I hurt them all the time. And I just wanted to be alone with the drugs. I cut everything off. And I was seeking, and one night I had an experience that, from my higher power, from Jesus. It's straight from God for me. That's how I was able to recover. He let me know that somehow everything was going to be all right. And I just broke down and I cried and I said, God, fix me or kill me tonight, one of the two, because I don't want to do this anymore. I finally found the end of my rope. You know, people say, oh, you have to get to a bottom. And I used to laugh at that and go, which one? You know, come on, get real, bottom. 6 feet under is bottom. But finally, I hit a place that was my bottom. And I didn't stop right away because I didn't know how. But and then again, getting arrested again put me in confinement where my body and my brain had to clean up, had to clear up. And as that was happening, everything, I called myself opposite girl. I live in backwards world now. I don't do anything the way I used to. I used to react immediately to any outside stimulus. Now I don't do that. This has been a long journey of learning who I am. And I never knew that. I never knew who I was. I was just whatever you wanted me to be for that 5 minutes or 10 minutes, or, you know, tell anybody what they wanted to hear so they would get off your back. Now I am confident. I'm happier than I've ever been. I'm going to be 62 years old. So, and this 9 years of sobriety to me has been the beginning of my life. I used to feel like my life was just a bad movie. You know, like I was actually watching it going, man, this is a nightmare. When is this movie going to end? Or start, actually, is what it was like. When is this movie going to start? It was just a long trailer for a bad movie. And that experience and accepting my higher power into my life, because of desperation, pain, no other options. You know, my friend says, oh, my golf card said 0. Well, everything in my life said 0. I had no place else to turn. So it was, God, if you are real. And the other part was, if you think you can do something with me, because I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to live sober day by day. So I learned a little bit in rehab. Luckily, I was sent to rehab from the courts because I would never go on my own. I was like, oh no, Amy Winehouse, you know, no, I'm not going to rehab. It was my theme song. So opening my mind and opening my heart was a tipping point. But that was something I couldn't do for myself because I was shut down.
You know, listening to your story, I'm so inspired, and there are many pieces of it that remind me of my own journey. And I too, in that darkest moment, really was at that place where begging God for help was the only next step. You know, I remember walking through a Walmart looking for ways on how I was going to end my life. And I was so exhausted. It was a Saturday night before Halloween. I was so exhausted in that walking down those aisles. I just went home and went to bed and had this really prophetic dream that was like, help me, I'm struggling. And then, you know, what came after, you know, didn't unravel any better, but it was a starting point and a turning point to what came next. The other thing that I heard from you in sharing your story is this ability through sobriety that you show up, and I'm going to use different words here, to be responsive and not reactive. You know, when
Absolutely.
Things come up, to be able to respond and not react. And I think it's so important for anybody that's listening that has struggled with their own journey or is struggling or may know someone that is. You know, the beautiful thing about life, I think, is it is a series of chances, and that it is because of grace that we are given opportunities to begin again. And, I don't think it has to be a story as profound as yours, but the reality is, from my perspective, what is meant for you does not pass you by. And it sounds like it took you 50 plus years of a journey and life experience to get to this place of, I cannot do this alone. And I want to reiterate for anybody that's listening, you know, the inspiration of the stories we're hearing today, like they are sharing with you that they didn't do this alone either. And it was a journey of fits and starts that really comes back to trusting in something bigger that's guiding you, regardless of what that is. I mean, it doesn't have to be God per se, but, a sense of faith of something that's bigger than you. And I really believe that is a sustaining principle that helps so many of us.
Oh, no doubt. For me, that's because like I said, I did try everything else. And if God didn't come in at that point, I would have, I was the same way. I wanted to die.
Right.
Just wanted to die.
And, I didn't really want to die. I just wanted the pain to stop. You used that word earlier. And I think that's what so many of us are looking for in those darkest moments of how do I make the pain stop? And I think that's how people, end up in the depths of addiction to begin with, is they really don't have any other coping skills to navigate what pains them. And they just want to not feel. That to me is a root cause of why a lot of us end up doing things that are harmful for us. Feeling is painful a lot of the times.
Yes. Especially when, everybody I meet, I do a lot of different things now that I love doing. I go to the jail to talk to the girls there because I was them. I am them. I go to the rehab to talk to the girls because, again, I was them, I am them, and when I see them, I see this big, huge spirit that's inside of them. And they're beautiful to me, they're just beautiful to me. And life now for me it's amazing every day, because now I don't know what's going to happen. Now I do turn my life over on a daily basis and say, hey, if you can use me, great. If it's my day to sit on the couch today, that's okay too. And I don't feel like it's low expectations for myself, although sometimes I think that. But it is absolutely a beautiful, easier life, not having to be in control and not having to plan every second of my life and just say, hey God, I want to put good out there. It's that simple. I just want to put good out there. I put enough bad into the world, and I know I'm forgiven for that. That's another thing that was huge for me. I don't beat myself up anymore. Now, it took me years in recovery to get to that point, that none of this was immediate. It's a lot for me. It was reading. I love to read, so I study different things, and but I call them spiritual downloads that I've gotten over time, those revelatory moments that just says, oh, I don't have to be better than anybody else.
Right. And the wall doesn't have to fall on you to do it.
I can just be me.
I love it. Kelly, I know your journey probably looked different than Karen's. I mean, as you were talking about earlier, I'd love to hear from you. What was your tipping point? I mean, you had mentioned earlier that, the possibility of a pending divorce kind of shook things loose, but you had been grappling with this for 9 years prior. What was the turning point?
Well, it definitely was my husband and our marriage and valuing the relationship. And I had been in conflict about my drinking for a long time. And so, and again, the denial of saying, well, I'm not as bad as, and even surrounding myself with people who drank more than I did. So I could say, well, I don't look like that. But, I do want to talk about the concept of, hitting rock bottom, because I don't think that somebody has to, be arrested or get a DUI or, and maybe that's something that has to do more with a personality of a person. But again, I could look at my dad, who I knew was dying of cirrhosis of the liver, and I could look at Karen, who was in a drug-induced psychosis, and I could know in my heart that if I kept doing what I was doing, I could look like that too. And so, that is the value of 12-step programs. When I wasn't ready, I would go to them and say, I'm nothing like you people. I can't relate to you people, and I don't belong here. When I was really ready to stop drinking, I went to the same meetings with the same people and would be able to look at the similarities and see that I too was an alcoholic. It just could look different, but the common themes are the isolation alcohol creates, the numbness, the depression, the anxiety, and those are the tipping points for me. Everything was really good in my life. I had a great job, I had a great marriage, and yet I'm depressed and anxious all the time. And the things that I did to try to stop drinking, for 9 years was go to meetings, deny that I was like those people. I was seeing therapists and psychiatrists and lying to them. So that's really funny to me in hindsight. Like, I'd pay good money and go and lie. And, it wasn't their fault that they weren't able to help me. I tried acupuncture, I tried anti-abuse, I tried yoga. I made lots of commitments and promises to myself and others. And so, and I was fiercely independent, and I was, like I said, a high performer and used to being able to manage things that I wanted to manage. And alcohol was one of the things, probably one of the only things that I couldn't manage in my life effectively or give up effectively. So, I did have to admit complete defeat, and I had to ask for help. And when I asked for help, it's just a beautiful thing. I mean, people in recovery really want to help you for no other reason than giving back what was freely given to them. And I'm still overwhelmed by that 17 years later. And, I give back now, and I'm part of the process. But the other thing that was common with Karen and I would say probably many families, is it was not a family member that could help us. And
Right.
Believe me, we tried. It was
I
not.
mean, I know you certainly tried to help Karen.
Yes, we tried. And so it was a complete stranger that was, for me, willing to hug me on the way in, hug me on the way out, and be patient and share with me what worked for them. And I have to say that, the only thing I had that was different this time after 9 years of going to 12-step meetings was I went into a women's group and I said to myself, if it works for these people, it could work for me too.
Well, and really what I'm hearing from both of you, and I mean, in the many other people I've worked with over the years and my own journey included, is it really is a journey about getting real with yourself and ultimately done well about learning to love yourself. And
Yes.
and for those of us who grow up in painful family structures that have abuse, that have alcoholism, that have, tremendous trauma, I'm not sure that love is always at the top of the list. And it doesn't mean those people don't love you, but the negative consequences or the damaging effects that are a result of those relationships really play out through the course of our lives. And what I've recognized is, even being close to 50 now, I can look back and say, I believe people do the best they can, and sometimes their best isn't good enough. But most of us are walking around wounded, trying to heal the things that happened to us in the first 7 or 8 years of our lives. And the unintended consequences of how those play out. I mean, you guys have shared your beautiful stories today from very different perspectives. And what I love about having you both as guests together is you came from the same place, and it manifested itself into something very different yet similar, and how those stories get woven together into what we call family history.
Yes.
It is. Oh. To me, it's amazing. I am so I have my family back. I am a part of a family again. I didn't think that would ever happen. And that's probably it is the thing second to my breath and having a life that I am most grateful for in my life, because that's what I love the most in my life is my family, and I always, for me, the gratitude is ongoing and I keep it daily. I'm grateful for everything. Like I said, I'm grateful for my breath. And I believe, my firm belief is that a grateful heart will not pick up or drink again, because I've got nothing I'm happier now.
Right.
I am still selfish. I have to say this. If this was an unhappy journey for me, I might go back because I am that human. I'm just human.
And frankly, that's what's real and what's raw. Tell me how Warrior Sisters was inspired. I mean, you all have had amazing recovery journeys and sustained recovery at this point. What was the inspiration for you guys to take those stories and turn them into a book that, again, for anybody who's listening, you should absolutely pick a copy of Warrior Sisters up. I was left turning each page, wanting to know more. What was the point of inspiration for you all?
Well, my inspiration was Kelly, to tell you the truth. So
Okay.
I'm going to let her take this one over a little bit and just talk about that, because COVID helped us also with that. So Kel, you want to?
Well, in my career, I've met some really remarkable people that make such a difference in our world. And I had originally had some passion around wanting to maybe write stories about them. And I still may do that. But for whatever reason, I kept procrastinating. And a friend had mentioned that she thought that Karen and I's story would be really powerful and well received, and that people could benefit from it. And it really resonated with me. I thought, wow, that's a great idea. And so I called Karen and I said, how do you feel about writing a book? And she said, yeah, sure. Literally, that's all she said. And so we sat down and wrote our book, and we each wrote our own sections. Karen journaled all of hers by hand and spoke it into a phone, and I uploaded it and put in punctuations and paragraphs, and that's how she wrote her sections, and I wrote mine. And we got some great feedback initially about, write until we felt like we had nothing else to say, and don't edit it, along the way, and that type of thing. And so we had a lot of content, and then we hired a book coach to help us figure out how to organize it in a way that would be readable and fun for readers. And so that process took about 18 months. And I've heard that that's pretty fast, actually. But we and as Karen said, COVID was helpful. Yeah. Karen was COVID was helpful. So I mean, the purpose of writing the book for me, and it was really a variety of reasons. One is to instill hope and inspiration for all people, because I think whether you have an addiction or a mental health issue, or you like to shop too much, or whatever the issue is, that in our circumstances, I wanted people to understand that no matter how far down things go or how hopeless you feel, there is always a solution and there's always an answer. You just have to take the first step in wanting to make the change. And so that was one reason to instill hope and inspiration into others. And honestly, I had Karen dead and buried, so I had given up. And so that's why I wanted to write the book, because in my wildest dreams, I never thought that she could recover from her crack cocaine addiction. So that was number one. Number two was to really hopefully affect the stereotypes of people that are afflicted with alcoholism and addiction, because, there are lawyers, there are physicians, there are teachers, there are therapists, there are, people still perceive alcoholics as, homeless people living under a bridge. And there is some truth to that, but there's so many people, suffering on the inside that still are able to function. And I wanted to hopefully make a difference with the stereotypes around what we look like, because yes, Karen and I are an alcoholic or an addict or both, but guess what? We're sisters, we're writers, we're therapists, we're volunteers, we're a lot of things, and that's just one piece of who we are. And
you're working to make a difference.
Yes.
That to me that you've taken these painful stories and turned them into legacy work of how are you going to show up to serve others. That is so inspiring to me. I cannot stress enough, and for anybody that's listening, if you think that you don't know somebody that struggles with addiction, you do. It is everywhere. And I go back to, and not to unpack the root cause of addiction, but I mean, to keep it really simple, addiction in its purest form is about people not wanting to feel whatever it is they're not wanting to feel. And that can look like, as Kelly mentioned, a variety of ways. It doesn't have to be drugs and alcohol. It can be shopping. It can be sex. It can be food. It can be anything. And it does take courage to show up for yourself in a different way, to support yourself, really, like we were talking about earlier, looking in the mirror and learning to love yourself and love what is. And I can say from my own experience, long after that, I still struggle with looking in the mirror sometimes and recognizing that even after all of the work that I've done, it's still work, But Karen, as you mentioned earlier, the work builds upon the work and it becomes worth it at some point, and you realize that there's more good. And as you leave behind the broken bodies in the past, you really can evolve into a different season of your life and show up for others in a way that, unless you've been there, is one of the most gratifying things I personally have ever done.
Yeah, me too. I kind of look at it like this. I look at it as a like balance thing. And I think if I spent 52 years putting bad out there, I know I don't have another 52 years left. So right. The shorter part of my life, which is what's left, is got to be so good, okay, to counterbalance that. And that has been my experience so far. I wouldn't trade the last 8 years of my life for another 50 years of the first. You know what I mean? I never understood what being, quote, happy was. I thought that, I hated that word. I mean, I'm like, happy? We're not in this world to be happy, okay? Go do something, get a job, whatever. And I don't like to use the word happy. My dad said that happy is for clowns, okay? So,
and nobody likes a clown.
That's right. Scary things that they are. But that the deep hole inside is gone. Right. It's gone. It's filled. And that the peace and I guess the word serenity, is an awesome feeling. And once I had that, I never want to give that up. And I know I don't get that from me. I know I get that from my higher power, who is Jesus, and that my relationship with him is the most important thing to keep the rest of this in place.
Right.
So
and it sounds like you've really lived by the principles of the program, and recognizing the gifts that can come from sobriety. And I go back to that word happy a minute ago, and I meant no offense to clowns if we have any listeners. You all are wonderful people, and serve to help make people have joy. Something that was shared with me along the way is happiness is a choice. And I really do believe that in any moment, you have the ability to show up and choose, am I going to be happy in this moment or not? And again, I'm not saying that the goal is to do that consistently, all day, right, every day. But I mean, when you get to a certain place, there is this ability to navigate life and recognize that you have a choice. So I guess my next question is for anybody that's listening that is maybe stuck in that spot, they've danced on the edge of getting help or facing an addiction. What would you say from your words would be maybe a guiding principle for somebody to look to or, move forward from?
I can tell you what my first thing would be: stop thinking about it. Stop thinking about it and take some action. You can stay in your head forever and nothing changes until you, quote, bust a move. Okay. you're not going to get anywhere. And I personally had to have that done for me because I didn't think I was hopeless. I had no hope anymore. So that prayer, I would say, take some action and ask for help. And when you can't ask somebody outside for help, just talk to God, really. Just and a prayer can be one word, which is help. It doesn't have to be some long thing. Just, I'm done. I'm so done.
And for those who are listening that maybe God is not their guiding principle, I mean, it is okay to ask the universe for help. It
Absolutely.
is okay to say, I am powerless in this moment and need somebody to lend a hand up.
Yes.
Kelly, what would you say? Well, I totally agree with what Karen said. And, my husband and I used to fight about it. I would say, I have a disease. And he would say, no, you're making a choice. And I think it's both. Because, I'm not debating that alcoholism is a disease. At the same time, I ultimately had to make a choice. I had to make a decision. And there were times where I played games and thought I made a decision, but wasn't really committed to taking the action. And so I do think it's about taking the action. The other thing is that my fear was that, I was holding this big secret and that everybody cared whether I was an alcoholic or not, and disclosing it was going to ruin my career and, all the facades that I put up, and the guardedness that I had. And when I really just was willing to take some risks and share in a vulnerable way, people showed up. And, if I was never willing to open that door and I stayed isolated, I wouldn't be where I'm at today. And so I concur with everything Karen said. And I just want to encourage people, take a risk, show some vulnerability, have some discernment around who you're talking with, and you will have some very significant gifts that come from that.
Well, and that really plays into what I always describe as the next right step approach in my own work of working with clients. Like, really, I think change happens in an instant. It may be built upon a lifetime of experiences, but it happens in an instant. And really, what any of us need is that 20 seconds of courage to show up for ourselves and take a next step. And sometimes asking for help is recognizing I don't know the next step, but having the courage to talk to somebody who is maybe further along the path or who, is further in the journey that can show up and guide you in a way that you're not able to for yourself. Like, it is amazing how when you're ready,
the teacher appears.
Things make space for you to get exactly what you need. And I go back to what we talked about earlier. What is meant for you will not pass you by. Mm-hmm. I wholeheartedly believe that. And sometimes in life, we want to push the timing forward and make it happen in our own way in an effort to control things. And I just don't think that that's where you get the real fruit of the journey. There are things that are meant to happen serendipitously in ways that we will never be able to explain, but that make all the difference. So one last simple question. I know you've talked about this in different ways. Give me one nugget of what you're most grateful for in this journey from each of you.
Wow. Oh, I am grateful for my brand new life. I am grateful for my breath.
I love it. Kelly.
I'm grateful that I love myself.
Yes.
That's beautiful. Full stop.
That's it, girl.
So we have just a couple of minutes left. Kelly and Karen, tell our listeners how they can get in touch with you guys. Where can they buy your book and how can they follow up with you if they want to reach you directly?
Well, we would love to hear from our readers and listeners, and
yes.
You can do that through kellyandkaren.com. There's a place to send us emails, and we will respond, and we would really love and appreciate hearing from you guys. You can purchase Warrior Sisters on Amazon or any book retailer. When I'm down, I go to Amazon and I read the reviews because they're beautiful and they bring tears to my eyes. And I hope that anyone that has an interest will go to Amazon or kellyandkaren.com. And on kellyandkaren.com, we have a great 45-second book trailer, and it's very powerful. And I would encourage others to take a look at that as well.
I love that. And I just, go ahead.
Okay, I do want to add also that the book delves a lot deeper into, you know, a lot of things that went on. So it's kind of juicy in parts.
I want to say it was a page turner. I loved it. Again, I'll give you a plug. I encourage anybody listening to get yourself a copy of it. And finally, we would love to have you subscribe to Get Unstuck radio show pages. You can find us at Get Unstuck Radio on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and Twitter. Next week, we have another incredible guest coming up, Don Tolop. Don is a seasoned branding and marketing professional who is also passionate about helping those who struggle with the challenges of life. You won't want to miss our inspired conversation next week. Until next time, remember, every journey begins with a next step, and you too can be your own champion.